Hello and welcome back to our Inspirational Interview series. I'm Hannah Levin with Heartfelt Wellbeing, and I am thrilled to bring you a really fascinating woman, entrepreneur, and fellow creative soul with a background in the arts as well for our inspirational interview today. So I hope you feel really inspired. I'm going to read a little bit about the fabulous Regyna Curtis. She's a soul wisdom mentor, and she has over 40 years of experience living as an intuitive being. She has a fluency in the language of her soul. Doesn't that sound like what we all are seeking? She is an expert in supporting women to align with their ways of receiving and expressing information, as well as natural rhythms and cycles. We know a little bit about that here, to create sustainable work-life ecosystems. She seamlessly blends experiences in the fields of education, business, and energy work with her intuitive gifts into a unique approach, teaching you how to cultivate and care for yourself and your work, and supporting all areas of your life. So she will inspire you to stay curious, explore joyfully, and keep creating. So I'm excited to welcome Regyna. Welcome.
Hi, it's so good to be here. Thank you.
Hello. Yes, welcome to our Facebook group. And those of you that are live here, feel free to participate in the conversation if you would like.
I love
So,
that.
yeah, so I'd love for you to give us a little more information about kind of who you are at this point in time and what has led you to the work that you're doing now.
Absolutely. And thank you for that beautiful intro. I'm so excited to be here. And we were just chatting about how we've kind of been in this similar space, but in our own worlds of that. So we're starting to come into this collaborative space now. And I think that's really a part of what my journey has been. And it's been kind of, getting to know people, getting to know myself through different spaces and different experiences. And then kind of coming into this place of, okay, now how do I integrate that into who I am and where I'm going? And so really living this experiential life of exploration and curiosity and following joy. Joy is a really big indicator for me of what a successful experience, a successful project, a successful relationship. If right from the start I can find that joy, that spark of joy in it, I know, okay, that's going to be really important. And I definitely feel that in this connection and in the work that I'm doing now. So I know that's probably a little more abstract than maybe you were thinking, but hopefully that aligns with it. That's really who I am and where I am right now.
Awesome. Yeah, so let's dive in a bit to this concept of soul wisdom language.
Yeah, I love it. So this is one of my favorite things to talk about. So I'm so excited to be here and talking about it. It's something that has developed over many years. Remember, really, it's something that I've been doing and experiencing and embodying my entire life. I just now have language for it. And I've always been really interested in languages. At one point when I was in high school, I was taking Russian and French at the same time. And I remember being in my French class and kind of like sliding words into the French and the teacher who was teaching me actually taught both classes, and so she didn't notice, but the kids in the class noticed, and they were like, what is that word? Like, I don't know what that means. And at that point in my life, I thought I really want to be an interpreter. Like that's one of the things I want to do with my life. So at the same time was kind of, I was, I think, a sophomore in high school at the time, and was starting to play around with the idea of, or maybe I want to be an artist, maybe I want to be a teacher, maybe I want to, all these things. And when I look at the work I'm doing right now, that's exactly what I am doing, is a combination of those things. So it's fascinating how we get these hints from our, what I call your soul wisdom, right? from your authentic ways of knowing how you receive information, how you process that information, and being, or how you express, integrate, and really kind of reveal the how that information comes through you and to you. And that is what I call a soul wisdom language. So it's how that wisdom, that those ways of knowing and being, how they speak or communicate to and through you. And I really am trying to reframe, not saying speak, because, and we can get into this in a moment, but there are 5 wisdom channels that this wisdom communicates to us with, and not all of them are spoken. So
Yes, I think that's so key. I was working with a client earlier this morning, and she was talking about like wanting to like hear affirmation, and
mm,
and I was thinking, not all of us like hear. It's not in hearing that we receive. There are
yeah,
many other ways that we do. And so I'm really curious about these 5 ways that you just
absolutely,
mentioned. Because, yeah, I
absolutely.
mean, my first question was like, so how do we learn to speak the soul wisdom language? So it sounds like there's 5 different avenues.
There are. So I call them wisdom channels, and I like to use the acronym. Um, Now I just like totally blanked on it. Times. I was just reading a book that used a different acronym, and it like popped into my head, and I was like, "That's not the one." But so anyway, the acronym that I use is Times. TIMES. And the channels that our soul wisdom speaks to and through us are thinking, images, sensory. I mixed up the order. Movement and emotion. And so if you actually put them in that order, TIMES, that can help you remember them. So when we say something like, I hear guidance, sometimes you do hear guidance through your audio, right? Like your clairaudience, but you may also hear it through sensory, or you may see it through images, or you may actually experience it in movement in your body, right? One of the things that something that I do with people when they come into my soul wisdom fluency course right away is we look at what your yes no indicators are. And these are the ways that your soul wisdom communicates a clear yes or a clear no to you. And that is, I think, the foundation of really getting to know your soul wisdom, or what a lot of people would call their intuition, or their intuitive guidance. And it's just recognizing what are the ways that shows up. And one of the things that I do is when I'm receiving a full yes from my soul wisdom, I smile and I nod my head. And we might think, oh, well, that's because in my head I'm thinking that I'm agreeing. And that's true. I am thinking I'm agreeing, but not always. Sometimes I'm not really tuned into that thinking channel, but I have this automatic reaction where I smile and I start nodding my head yes. And I'm like, oh, okay, that is me. My whole body is agreeing with this as a yes.
That's awesome. When you were just talking about the times options,
Yeah.
um, I couldn't help but think about the koshas. Do you know about the koshas? And it's like the 5 bodies that we
Oh,
have. Like most of us just think of ourselves as a physical body, which
yeah.
in Sanskrit is called the Annamaya kosha, which is the food body. So it's like we are made of it's like this physical. We take in physical sustenance. It feeds our physical. But then we also have these 4 other bodies. The breath
Emotional
body,
body.
energy, the mind, then there's the
Cool.
intuition, and then there's this connectivity body. It's called the Anandamaya kosha. Ananda means bliss. So it's like the all one principle. Like we're not here doing this alone, right? Like this
Yeah.
journey of life. So yeah, that was so interesting listening to you share those 5 things, and also being an educator and thinking about different modes of
Mhm.
learning. Also, it's like there's not just one way to
No.
know something.
Yeah, I love that you just brought that up. And also, I am a total nerd. And anytime I hear, like, I get this new kind of like piece of wisdom to explore, I'm like, ooh, that's like mental check in my brain was like, go explore that, learn more. There's definitely some juicy stuff there. So I love that you just brought in the ways of learning, because I also have a background in education, art education actually, and one of the things that you learn in education, in your education, that's quite a meta experience, but is these different ways of learning, right? So there's kinesthetic learning, which I've actually sat down and kind of made parallels between these 5 wisdom channels and the methods of learning, right? So like movement would be kinesthetic, and your thinking channel would be more of that cognitive way of learning. And so there are all these parallels in different, I'll say, language, vocabularies, I guess is really what I want to use. Like there's different vocabulary that we use for different methods or modalities of being, right? And so I think this is how this experience really comes together. In education, we have a certain vocabulary, but you can actually translate that into a whole nother vocabulary from another modality, like from yoga or like from soul wisdom, right? Like these are just different ways that we experience our wisdom coming to and through us based on the activities, the external things that we are exploring in the moment.
Yes, I love it. And so there's this piece when you described what a soul wisdom language is. So could we say that it's like your deepest truth?
Ooh, yeah.
Would
You
that
could absolutely say that. Yes, I love that. It feels like when you said that, like I felt something like really in my, like between my solar plexus and my heart, that just was
Hmm.
like, it was like a weight, a heaviness, but not in a bad way, in a negative way. It was like this, like sinking into like, ooh, yes, that's like coming into the core of who you are, who I am. And I think that's an example right there of how we, the reason I say, I'm going to skip a little bit, I'm going to expand upon that, but the reason that I love to explore with people what their soul wisdom is because it's like a recipe, right? You sometimes you'll take like and I am all about like a good personal development tool. I love, like, I've taken every one that I've ever come across, right? Like I could tell you my Enneagram, my Myers-Briggs, like all the things. And that's a way, it's a way of how I explore, right? But oftentimes you get this, like you take the test and then you get this answer and it's like, you are this, right? Or how, like, when I first started learning about astrology, and astrology is something I very much use as a tool in the work that I do with others, but I learned my sun sign, right? And that was like, I am a Capricorn. And my partner and I have a joke sometimes. We'll be like, so many times in like movies and stuff, you say like, what's your sign? It's like, I'm a Capricorn. And so like whenever somebody, I don't know, somehow that became a joke, but we put these identities on ourselves and then it's like everything else fades away. But there's a whole natal chart, right? There's a whole lot more in the truth of who we are, our deepest essence, right? And it's complex and it's layered and it comes out in different ways at different times. And so I believe that our soul wisdom language really is the true essence of who we are, and it's expressed in relationship to whatever's going on in our external environment, right? And the more you deepen any relationship, the more you get in sync with it. So if you practice a language, whatever that language is, if it's a spoken language, if it's a movement language, right? Yoga is both, really. I think it's many languages, but let's just talk about for a moment just the physical practice, right? That happens. That's a language. And your body learns how to move and hold different poses, different energies, different meaning, right? And there are all these other ways of receiving insight and expressing that are happening while you're in those poses. But there may be a time when you actually just focus on, how do I learn the language of this movement, right? And then the deeper you go, maybe then you start to receive the next layer that's happening. And so your soul wisdom is really like a recipe, right? And you tend to tweak that recipe as you go along. Like the more times you make it, the more you understand, oh, I actually like it with a little more of this. Or maybe there's like fresh ripe tomatoes in my garden, and so those, I'm going to incorporate those today. And that's really how I understand your soul wisdom language.
I love it. Yeah. So another piece of understanding this that I'm curious about is that it seems like to engage with your soul wisdom language, it's a path to self-trust.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Yeah. Will you talk to us a little bit about, I think as women, especially, we tend to not deeply trust ourselves.
Absolutely. So actually, I want to reference the book that we just wrote in together. So I have a copy of it. I can never do this on StreamYard. I always feel like, there it is. Okay, right there. It's called Nourished. And my chapter in this book is about my journey with lucid dreaming. And it's through lucid dreaming that I actually learned to trust having these conversations with my soul wisdom. So the first part, I start right off with a lucid dream that I was having when I was about 6 years old. I was being chased by a bear, and it's a very visceral experience. Like I can feel the heat of this breath on the back of my neck, and I'm in it. I'm totally physically in it, like trying to run to the door to get there so I don't get eaten by this bear. And then this voice pops in that's like, Regyna, just scream and wake yourself up. I mean, it's easy. Like, just do it, right? Like there's this wise voice that comes in. And I was like, yeah, that makes sense. That makes total sense. Wait, who are you? What are you doing here? Like, how did I start getting chased by this bear? And there's this whole kind of unfolding of that conversation and when and how it started. And then this is something that's really kind of evolved, and I keep doing this motion, right? I'm very much in fluent in my movement channel as well, right? And my body sometimes makes the motion before my brain gets there to say, hey, this is the thing you're trying to say. So we learn in cycles. And each time we come around to, the next level of the cycle, we expand into this next level, we deepen that trust with our soul wisdom. And sometimes that happens internally through experiences like, these conversations I had with my dreams. Other times they happen externally. And I actually contributed to another book called Mystics Revealed. In that book, my chapter was all about encounters with strangers, and how, just like with the dreams that I had that I shared about in this book, I also had these external experiences. And these people would show up in my life, and they would provide these wisdom nuggets for me. And they were always kind of a little bit strange experiences. And I think that that's essential, because sometimes when you're getting to know, actually, I think all the time, but I don't want to speak for everyone else's experience, but I know for myself, in those moments when I was at a growth edge, I needed something that was a bit strange, odd, like really vibrant, right? To stand out and show me, like, this means something. And when that was happening through my dreams, one of the first ways that I understood that I was having a dream that was, what's the word? Prophetic. So I sometimes have prophetic dreams. They're not all lucid, but the dreams speak to me in many ways. They're more vibrant. The colors are brighter. I can feel myself in them. And so in that way, I think they are a bit lucid, but it's like, I can feel myself in the experience. There's something when I wake up where I go, oh, that was trying to tell me something. Now, do I look back and try to learn something from it from my past? Is it telling me something about an action to take in my present? Or is this something that doesn't quite give me information about the now, but I know it's important, so I'm going to kind of set that over here and just let it be until it shows up again. And so those are all the ways that, not all the ways, but those are some of the ways that I've built trust with this over time. And it's a really personal experience. It's an individual experience. And I think that is one, I'm honored to be able to help people through this process and to be able to actually just show up as a witness and hold that space for you to be who you are and help you interpret that, rather than coming in and saying, this is how you do it and this is why. Because some of those things might resonate, but others won't. And I feel like that just ends up being really confusing rather than helpful.
Yeah. Do you have any tips that you could share with us today about starting to access?
Yeah. Um, the the best advice I can give is to be curious and compassionate. So, setting an intention to say, I'm open, I'm curious, I want to get to know this. And then being compassionate to how that shows up, right? Because it's going to show up in ways that feel natural to you, and that might seem too easy. One of the comments that I get a lot from people is, that's it? Like, I've been doing that ever since I was like, as long as I can remember. And I'm like, bingo, exactly. Like, it is natural. It is a part of who you are already. And yet there's so much in the world, and we can use the word conditioning if we want to, but like, I feel like that term is overused, but we have learned not to trust that. Or we've learned to make those parts of ourselves smaller because they feel strange, or someone else is uncomfortable with them, or they don't understand it. Well, here's a big tip. They're not meant to understand it because it's not for them, it's for you. And so, really, this is a little cliche, but take a look in the mirror, right? Get to know yourself. Observe who you are and how you're showing up, and then just get curious with it, right? Stay curious is one of my favorite things to say. So yeah, that's my best advice.
Awesome. I love that. I taught a yoga class this morning about curiosity. So
Beautiful.
weaves right in. And I keep muting myself because we have jets flying over. I don't know if that's really loud, but
I can't hear it, but no,
okay,
that's totally
good.
fine.
Excellent. Excellent. We'll carry on. So, so one thing that you just said about it's often something that we're like, oh, I've been doing that my whole life. And the other piece that I just want to acknowledge is it's probably something that you feel is different or weird
Oh
or
yeah.
maybe even wrong.
Yeah, one of my other favorite things to say is embrace your weirdness. And that, I think, is actually a part of what I tied into that, Encounters with Strangers chapter, because it really is about embracing your own weirdness. And I sometimes will, sometimes when I put when I'm doing a speaking engagement or teaching a workshop or something like that, and I do an intro, I'll list things about myself, like, oh, I'm an intuitive artist or an art channel. I'm weird, and I just put it out there because the more, not to say like, I'm not using it in a shaming way. I'm really just like, I love that I'm different from other people. I can't say that that always was the case, right? I spent years and years trying to find the parts of me that aligned with different experiences, right? And I don't know if you do much with human design, but I have an open G center and an open throat center, and everything else is defined. Um, and so, what that means for anyone who's not really familiar with human design, the way that I would interpret that is I am a channel, right? It is when I open my throat center, when I allow for wisdom to flow through me, that is when I'm most aligned, when I'm most accurate. The funny part of that is that I can not remember what I just said like 10 seconds later. So, so sometimes people will be like, oh, can you repeat that? I'm like, I don't know. I was just like, it was just flowing through me. The other part of that is that with an open G center, it means that I can find my purpose in any situation, in any conversation, in any job, in any role that I do. And for a long time, I didn't understand that that was actually a gift. I felt lost. I felt like I didn't fit in anywhere I went, because really the truth of it was that I wasn't able, or didn't feel confident and um, empowered to show up fully as who I was in any of those places. And yet I felt like I belonged there. So there was this, resistance, this, I don't know, this kind of like, see, I'm like doing this, like, what is the word for that? Like this kind of, grating, or it just like, it felt really edgy. I guess I'm going to use that word again, but it felt really edgy because while in some aspects I felt like I belong here, this is the place for me, my purpose lives here, at the same time I was like, oh, I don't fit here, I don't belong here. Like, how do those two things live in the same space?
Yeah. Yeah. We call that tapas. It's like the rub. It's like the friction.
Friction. Yes, that's the word. Exactly. Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you for hearing my
It's like a little uncomfortable, but it's also like polishing your rough spots,
Yeah. Tell me the word for it again.
Tapas, Tapas.
Like the dishes that you eat.
Right.
I was like, okay.
Just a different language.
Exactly. Well, see, this is how I hear lots of different languages at the same time. I love it. Very cool. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. So tell folks where they can find out more about you and what you do.
Absolutely. So my business name is called At Maitri, and it is actually a combination of two Sanskrit words that I put together. Yoga has been an important part of my journey, and so I wanted to honor that when I named my business. It comes from Atman, which means soul or self. Many different translations interpretations that you can have, and Maitri, which means benevolence, kindness. And so really the name of my company and the essence of the work that I do is finding kindness towards yourself, towards your soul. And so that is, you can see it on the screen at Maitri if you're watching in that way. So my website is www.maitri.com. It's also my social handle, so you can find me on Instagram and Facebook. And if you're interested in exploring your soul wisdom languages and becoming fluent in that language, I do have a program called Soul Wisdom Fluency, and you can just message me for more details. Let me know you're interested, and I'll send you the details on it.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And both Regyna and I are part of the book that she mentioned earlier.
Yes,
Nourish.
that I can't point to very well, but there it is.
You're doing a good job.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I've promoted that here in this group as well. So check that out. There's a whole bunch. I think there's 12 different women sharing their stories in all different ways about their paths towards nourishment. And we both are two of those women. So thank you so much for being here and sharing your soul wisdom in service to others finding theirs. And it's just been a pleasure talking to you today.
Awesome. Thank you. It's been a pleasure talking with you too, and really getting to know a little bit about your soul wisdom languages as well. So thank you for having me. And I look forward to exploring more in different ways.
Awesome. Yeah. And Regyna's in this group. So if you have any questions, feel free to type them in later. #replay. Okay.
Yes.
Take care. Bye.